Welcome to episode 1 of our new Women in Technology series. Today we have with us Tanya Carlis, a technology solutions delivery manager at Ernst & Young, an avid volunteer for various charity organizations, and an incredibly inspirational woman that we can all learn from. It's so great to have you here today.
Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me. I appreciate it. Glad to talk today.
So our first question for you today is, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your current role at E&Y?
Sure. So my current role with EY, so I've been with EY for almost 3.5 years. I come from a very technical background and I went to college for development. So computer information systems was my major in college. I developed for like 15 years. So I was a coder, so very technical, and kind of that was my track, right, when I got out of school. So at Ernst & Young, my role today is, technology solution delivery can encompass many things, right? So within EY, I'm on the financial services organization practice, which encompasses banks, credit unions, anything financial we support. So our projects could span from like Citibank, Wells Fargo, you name it, co-op. There's so many, American Express. So anything in the financial sector, it's kind of what I support. So I recently transferred to financial services from global tax. So I was on a tax group, which I was supporting tax application software, and I was a product owner there, which has primarily had me supporting the software development lifecycle and iterations of changes as we needed it. So fast forward today, I'm away from tax, and so now I'm in financial services, and I'm working on a client now that I can't really name, but a financial client, and I'm supporting them with some audit findings that they had with their loan practices. So it's still kind of technology, but it's more auxiliary a little bit than it is technical.
It's all really interesting.
Yeah.
It's really cool to learn about how, technology has a lot of different jobs and fields, and not only just coding, but also, like you said, technology delivery and working with clients. So that's really
Mhm.
interesting to me.
Yeah, it gives you a chance. So I think in reference to my career path, so I've been very hardcore tech, right, as I spoke, but I've been project management. I've been a developer. I've been a QA tester. I've been a project manager. So with my 33 years of experience, it kind of allows me to jump into different sectors and just kind of apply the same basic core concepts that are part of technology.
So it was great to learn about all of the different tasks that you've done in the technology sphere. So that takes us
Mhm.
to our next question. Did
Sure.
you always know that you wanted to be involved in the technology space, or was it a more winding road to get to where you are today?
What's funny, that's such a funny story. It wasn't as winding as one would think. I think so. When I got to college, I was a business administration major, right? And you have those general ed classes you have to take, and computer is one of them, you know, just like any general studies curriculum required. So all my friends were technology majors, and I was business administration, right? And maybe after the second, maybe my sophomore year, they were like, well, Tanya, you're taking all the same classes that we're taking and you're getting A's. Why are you a business administration major? And I was like, I don't know. I guess I just did it. You mindless pick a major. Sometimes it's not the major you stay with. So my road didn't really it winded in college. So in college is when I switched my major to technology, because I was like already getting A's in it. So it was like, I just need 4 more classes and it's a major. So it was just a natural path after that. And they were, it was nice to be in classes with my friends too. So would I say I loved it? Did I love it? It was very hard in college. It's very challenging. And I would also say, of course, I won't tell you the year I was in college because it's gonna make me seem really old. But when I was in college, it was not very many women nor Black women in technology space. So a classroom, I was pretty much the only one in the classrooms, and I just learned to listen and hear what other people were saying. I just stayed connected, worked in the computer lab. So I was kind of a nerd, and I had to stay connected so that I could learn from other students too.
So it was great to learn about how your college education really shaped which field you decided to go into. I think we can all agree that your experiences in taking classes in college can be really influential in your future career.
Yeah, it can either make you love it or hate it, right? So you can take a class and it's like, oh my God, I do not want to do this. And then you switch, just like, because you peel back the onion a little bit more and learn a little bit more about the field than just the class. But that was a great question.
Yeah, just to jump in for a second, I'm a first year student at MIT right now, and I totally resonate with what you're saying. Like, I feel like a lot of people come in here thinking they'll do one thing or not knowing at all what they want to do with the rest of their life, and then they
Mhm.
well, I think a lot of people like find their passions here in college, so it's nice to hear
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think it's a good place. And then sometimes it's about the exposure of your other friends majoring in different things. So you're finding out stuff indirectly without even being in a class, and you're like, wow, that sounds really cool. I like that. Let me look into the curriculum a little bit further. But you're right, it can evolve. You could start off saying you're going to be one thing. I actually will say the second thing that I was going to do besides, business administration, I love music. So I was going to be a music major, which is totally the other side of the brain, right? Left and right? And I still love music. I'm still passionate about music, but will it allow me to make a living? Those are the questions I had to ask back then. And I chose computers because I was good at it, and I would make a living at it, of course. Not to say music majors don't, because they do too. It's a different road.
John V, do you want to bounce in the next question?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, how did your formal education shape your career, or was it not hugely impactful? But I think you kind of already explored that in your previous question.
Yeah.
To the next one, did you have role models or mentors of either gender who really helped you in your career and personal development?
I thought about that earlier today when I was reading your questions, and I would probably say there were not very many people that kind of was a role model for me. Probably as I went to different jobs and different positions, I did have champions, people who would kind of tell me kind of how the road goes, make suggestions to me about books to read. There's this great book called 48 Laws of Power, right? That was brought to my attention when I was dealing with some conflict in IT, which can happen. It can happen in any field, actually. So I think I did have classmates that made recommendations to me when I told them what was happening with the particular person that I work with, that, I was having these challenges. So they made suggestions, books. There's been a few people along the way that have been very encouraging, but no one particular person. A lot of it has been a little bit of trial and error for me, with me being kind of the first person in that area.
That's really interesting. I know that that's a shared experience of many other women, especially young women in technology, where they don't really have someone to look up to, as sometimes they're the first in their family or their community.
Absolutely. And that for me, I was the first graduate in my family too from college. So the first generation graduate. So I didn't have a lot of trailblazers like in front of me. I just researched, I studied, and I Googled things when Google was available, right? Because I had newspapers and the library and other sources. But yeah, I think I kind of did a lot of self investigation because I was just that inquisitive person.
Since it obviously appears that you were really a trailblazer in your field, being one of the first in your community to go into IT, I wanted to ask you, what kind of advice would you give to young women who want to begin similar work in technology, but are unsure about how to go about doing it?
I think number one, because you have the advantage of there are more women in technology now, right? So I think with knowing that, I'd say definitely connect and try to find someone to be your mentor. There's no point in you not taking advantage of experience that other people can probably impart upon you, right? So if it's not anybody you know close, a personal, you can also reach out on LinkedIn to people that you've met. Like today you guys are meeting me. So that's a good segue into pinging me on LinkedIn and saying, hey, I'm looking into this. What are your thoughts? And trying to develop that, get a mentor along the way in your career. And that's the primary way you can do it with people you have met. But people you haven't met, I would say connect with some organizations such as EY. So we have a lot of mentoring programs with EY. I'm sure KPMG, PwC, and all the other big fours. They also have mentoring programs that you can sign up. There is something called DSY, like an all-star program. So I would probably look into more of the community programs that are offering mentoring services. That would be the other avenue, and just kind of try to sign up, and get connected. So there's always some programs. I think a lot of direction has happened with the fact that there's not many women in STEM, or not just women, people in STEM, right? So there's been a lot of push for STEM. And so I think there's a lot more organizations that you can Google, organizations that says, we're trying to get more people into STEM. They're going to have mentorship programs there. So I think that's an avenue I didn't have necessarily, but I think the next generation does have it, available to them.
Yeah, that's a wonderful answer. I think we can all agree that one of the best way to break into a field that maybe you don't know much about is to just put yourself out there and get in contact with other people who might be willing to help you. So that's great.
Yeah. And I think for the most part, I have been contacted by people that way on LinkedIn quite often. And if nothing else, it's not about you contacting them for a job. You're just contacting them to show interest in what they do. I noticed that you do ABC, because I think people look at, have you looked into who I am first before you're asking for help from me? I think that's just generally courtesy, right? How you connect with people, show interest in what they do. And then I think they'll be willing to provide guidance, because truthfully, we do want more women in STEM than we have today.
Great. And as you mentioned before, you have many, many, many years of experience in this field and across many different companies. So what are some of the most important cross-transferable skills that helped you succeed in different environments, and how did you build those skills?
I think I can safely say me learning to be a developer is very logical. It's very step by step. It's very intricate. Everything matters, right? All paths have to be explored when you're being a developer. So I would probably say my learning in college on how to develop and me actually developing in a role helps me break down things in different roles. So I learned to look at things as logical pieces. And so that kind of translates over into how I do my job. So I'm very organized. I have lists, I have steps. So I think a lot of that experience, leverage whatever experience and be able to translate it over into, because it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be apples to apples, right? Like I have a job now with the client I'm working on that is not at all IT in the way that I like. I like software development projects, right? That's my home, like, your happy place. So that's the place I know really well, like the back of my hand. And I got on a project that was not that at all. And I was a little bit like, why am I on this? But what I learned is some of the skills that I have as far as logical planning, step by step, thinking about all the scenarios that could be good and bad, helped me apply that to a project manager role, even though it's not even development whatsoever. So I say, try to look at things not necessarily on the surface. Like when you come into a job, try to look at what did I do in the past that might help me translate over into this new role, even if it's something I don't want to do. But just look at it as part of the journey to help you build your experience, build your brand, right? So regardless to what kind of job you're doing, you want people to know, if I am the person that says, can I take your order at McDonald's? Or I am the person who's developing this application that, does amazing things, people will know that I am detail oriented. I am, I care about what you think. I listen, I'm palpable, meaning I'm willing to learn and accept feedback and not necessarily feel bad about feedback, because sometimes it helps you grow. And that was a long answer, so sorry about that.
No, no worries at all. I think that was really interesting to hear because it kind of shows that even if you take a more like not traditional path, or you're not really sure if you have the experiences needed for your current role, there's a lot of ways that you can use your experiences to improve yourself in the future.
Yeah. And it boils down to your ethics, right? How you work, right? That goes with you everywhere you go. So they'll either know Niha does this or Minal does this. We know you're known for that, right? Aside from the job, they'll train you in a job, right? They have training programs. So our degrees are just to give us a baseline of core knowledge that shows we can learn different applications and apply them, test and pass it. But when we get on an actual job, they train you on the job,
Yeah, that totally resonates with me as well. One thing that I've heard a lot from older students at MIT and alumni is that like the actual content that you learn in college doesn't take you very far. It's more about like learning how to think and approaching like critical thinking challenges, things like that. So that resonates.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely facts. And I think, it's great. Now, one thing you probably have noticed is that some of the job requirements are starting to change in companies, right? They're not necessarily all asking for degrees anymore because, like you said, Neha, there's different paths to, the same road, right? Everybody does not necessarily have to go through a degree program for it, which is about more, they want to know that you have that practical knowledge, the critical thinking, the work ethic, that your brand is, I'm reliable and I'm the person for the job. Those are the things that are kind of priceless. And then those soft skills that goes along with it.
So our next question is bouncing off the idea of a wide variety of experiences. So we noticed that you have experience both in the public sector, working at local governments, as well as the private sector in different companies. So what are some of the similarities and differences that you noticed working in different sectors?
Well, I think in government, it's been a while since I worked in government sector. So which one are you referring to? So that way I can get some context on comparing them.
I think we saw you had a position in a local city government.
Oh, okay. I was a board of directors. Okay, so that was really different because so it was a board for my neighborhood where I live. I would probably say, actually, I enjoy that a lot. I enjoy working in the government sector, but it was a smaller piece of the government, not like running for Senate or councilman. I felt like I got more satisfaction out of what I could accomplish working in the government sector. So that position basically was a non-paid position. So it wasn't like, it was nominal pay, very nominal. But I enjoyed it because I had a lot of control and I could affect a lot of changes to my own neighborhood, like putting up streetlights or installing bushes in an area of my neighborhood where we wanted to make it look better. It was the main driver for me even signing up for it, was because it's 8 boards and I was a board president. 8 members on the board, we all had to vote unanimously, right? That's a small number of people to agree on something, right? Whereas working in a private sector, that's not the case. You have a larger amount of people in control. You have the hierarchy. that exists in the private sector, meaning whether it's the partner, the director, the executive, the senior manager, the manager, et cetera. So you have that structure in place. So the layers were flatter for me working in the government area versus in a private sector. And it's not apples to apples, because when I worked for the government sector here, I was not using my IT skills at all. So it was non-IT, it was just about community, finding out what the community needs, listening to people complain about stuff on Facebook, and you gather that information and say, hey guys, we need to do this, you know, and then getting the other part that I enjoy, because we had people supporting us, like the accountant, the financial manager, the general manager. So we would say we want XYZ done, and they would go get us a quote. They come back, it's 80,000 or whatever it is, and we would get to vote on it. So it was just much faster moving. We can make changes much faster. Working in private sector, because I didn't work in private sector within that kind of work, you know, because that's strictly social government work, whereas private sector is my IT experience. So they were a bit different. But I'll say I did work at Department of Revenue and Highway and Transportation in IT, but I was much younger. It was probably like my first year out of college. So I think it was just a lot of learning at that point in my career. So I was very green, you know, then. So that was the kind of, but I do, like, I was gonna run for councilwoman and I backed away because my primary job took up so much time in my life that I wouldn't be able to dedicate the time to being a council, and I have to run a whole campaign and everything. So I just wasn't motivated enough to continue on. But the board, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
It's really nice, even though you weren't like a city council member, it really goes to show that you can be part of your community and active in like just community projects, even with a full-time job. And it's really impressive that you're able to manage all those different responsibilities. So
it was tough. Trust me. You know, I only met once a month, and I think I got on another board. So I was on two boards. The one was the board of Castle Hills, and the other one was a community development block group. So it was a board we were given money, like maybe every organization, every city is allocated money out of the CARES Act, which, you know, that's what COVID triggered, the whole CARES Act. So every municipality is given a chunk of money, whether it's $1 million, $2 million, it varies across city to city. So New York will get a different amount, every city and every state. So we had to govern that money, and we had to review grant applications from all these organizations within Dallas or the Louisville area. And they would say, we need 30,000, we need 20,000. And you had to listen to what they did. It was a lot of power to have, and you wanted to help all of them, you know, because they were helping children. It was just a lot of things that are near and dear to my heart, for sure. But that was the most satisfying job, for real, over even working in IT.
That's all really interesting to hear about, and it's clear that you have a lot of experience in so many different fields. So that kind of takes us to our next question and our last one for today. What do you think are the most significant barriers limiting women from becoming involved in the technology space, and how did you overcome these barriers in your own life?
I think believing in yourself and defining your brand very, very clearly, meaning like, no, for people to know. So we had this class at EY that's called Building Your Brand, right? And I think primarily from job to job for me, I ran into a lot of barriers, a lot of them. And I had to just try not to take it personally. I had to keep pushing forward. And I had to like talk to classmates. Like I said, one suggested a book to me. With a woman being in technology, typically in my experience, there's been a lot of men up against you, right? Your competition is a man, typically. And I will have to say, I had a recent experience with an individual. I was assigned as the manager for this project, right? So he was my senior, and he had a conversation with me. And right off from the beginning, he said to me, I need you to copy me on every email to every client. I need you to contact me. If you have to have a conversation with me, contact me first. And it was a lot of things that was elementary to me that I don't think he should have been telling me to do, with the fact that I was brought on as a manager. So I think if you feel like you have to direct someone step by step like that, that to me is like an intern or a staff, maybe a senior who's pretty green, meaning no experience working on a project. So it rubbed me in a bad way, right? And I had to handle that without the angry feeling. I had to step back away from it, and I had to talk to a counselor. So sometimes you do have to have a conversation with someone else to help kind of tell them kind of what you're experiencing. It's more about how somebody made you feel. And for me, it made me feel that he didn't trust me. That was the feeling that I got, right? That he did not think I was competent in that role. And so for me, I had to calm myself, even though I know this is not right. I had to go and talk to someone and try to deal with that situation. And what's interesting is that when I did talk to the counselor, he was like, oh yeah, he's been an asshole. It was that obvious to him. And I was like, I'm glad he agrees, because I want to say that, right? But I'm cautious with my words. There's one other thing I'll say about that. If you feel a certain way about somebody, don't put it in writing. Be cautious what you say on conference calls with lots of people, because it could be recorded, right? Like we know we're recording this call, but it is very important to always take kind of the high road. And that's what I've had to do over the course of the years, and being able to get through those barriers. I had to take the high road and just do my job to the best of the ability that I could do it, right? And let everyone know that I'm known for doing my job with accuracy and quality and timely. And so it was that I had to persevere through a lot of those barriers. A lot of the barriers are not necessarily always men. Sometimes they were women too. Sometimes it was more about the level, because as the levels get higher, the stakes are higher. So that's when I was suggested this book, The 48 Laws of Power. Someone told me to read it, and I would suggest it as a read for anyone. It is the dynamics of working in a corporate atmosphere, and all of the actors, whether they're bad or good actors, in the realm of the workplace. And what's insightful is, there are people who are reading the same books, and they're looking for the same tips. So it's best to arm yourself with as much knowledge as you can. A lot of great LinkedIn articles talk about women in technology and suggestions. I would read those articles. I would listen to some of those TED Talks, because I think they will motivate you to know you're not the first and you won't be the last, but people will challenge you. And there will be some times where it's not a fair deal, but I would say don't let it stop you from persevering, and kind of align yourself with some mentors so they can hear it, and and they'll read it. They'll be like, yep, I know exactly what you feel like. I know what you're going through, but how you handle it is your mark on the world, right? How you handle conflict is how people will remember you, and not that you were right or wrong. It's how you handled it. Even though you were right, is how you handle it, your attitude in general. So I hope that did answer your question. It was the long way around. But, I think for me, I think it's more just, always taught to work hard and do a good job and get your education. And, I would always say CYA. Y'all know what that expression is. Cover your ass. Bad word. But always CYA, so whenever you're working in a situation, always have documentation, emails, proof of what happened. So that way, anyone ever calls you on it, you've got it, and you can say, no, this is actually how it happened, or whatever the case is.
So that was our last question for you today. So we can start wrapping up now. So Tanya, thank you so much for sitting down with us. We all learned a lot, so we'll definitely use your advice to grow our own careers. And to all of our viewers, if you like this webinar, please follow us on Instagram and stay tuned for future webinars. Thank you.
Thank you as well. You guys have a great day.